I've mentioned before on here, I'm on Blue Sky, and overall, I really like it. You know, there's a friendly interface. There are effective tools for curating your feed or blocking or muting people. And most of the people I like to follow on Shitter are now active on Blue Sky. But one issue I have with it, I think, is related to the fact that most of the people there are there because they left Shitter. And they left Shitter specifically because it's been overwhelmed with Nazis. And so people on Blue Sky really want to be nice. Like, it's not enough to just not be a Nazi or not throw around racial slurs. But in order to differentiate the new place from the old place, a lot of people really want the new place to be as nice as humanly possible. And they are kind of annoying about it, about policing the behavior of others. For instance, at first there was a big push to make sure that everybody blocked every right-winger as soon as they signed up for an account. Like, even before they make a post, block them, send the message they're not welcome here. Okay, fine, I'll do that. Then there was this new rule that you can never quote dunk on anyone, because quoting a person's bad idea and then, including your reply to it so that everybody can see you making fun of their bad idea, that's bad because it just spreads that person's bad idea. And I have mixed feelings on that because I enjoy seeing idiots get dunked on and I enjoy dunking on idiots. But okay, if this new platform doesn't like that, I won't do it. Okay, let's be realistic. I will do it a little less than usual. You know, we compromise. But in the past few weeks, I've noticed a new form of behavior policing. Every week or so, there's this new viral post explaining why we must accept the MAGA Republicans who are now suffering because of their own actions. Instead of admonishing them, we need to accept them. For instance, here's a person stating, "Friendly reminder that the best case scenario over the coming years is that a lot of people say, I supported Trump, but this isn't what I wanted at all. And when they do that, it's going to be really, really important that we say, welcome in, not fuck you, we told you so." And then this week I saw this post: "If you see someone who voted for Trump and is now facing unexpected consequences, I encourage you to sympathize with them and tell them that they were misled and lied to. This is an opportunity to recruit people against Trump that has value and is useful. Antagonizing them is not helpful." And okay, I'm sorry, this is where I gotta draw the line. Not only will I not be doing that, but every time I see another post on Blue Sky telling me to be nice to a Trump voter, I'm going to go out of my way to be mean to a Trump voter. I'm going to push a Cybertruck into the mud, rendering it completely useless. I'm going to spit on someone's well-done steak with ketchup on it. I'm not going to pick up my dog's shit from the yard that's flying a Confederate flag, etc. Okay, I kid, but also I'm not kidding, because here's the thing, you guys. I've been accidentally reading a lot about Nazis recently. I don't mean the current Nazis running the United States government. I mean the original Nazis 80 years ago. Recently, I've been randomly choosing books and movies and things without knowing anything about what they're about. And inevitably, they end up being about Nazis. I swear to God, it was happening so often that just so to make sure I could take a break from Nazi stuff, I grabbed a random detective novel, and this was its opening page. The book was 5 Decembers, by the way. It was really entertaining. I actually do recommend it. Besides that detective novel, though, I've noticed that several of the books and movies that I've been experiencing share a similar theme: the idea that the Nazis were not evil. Admittedly, I said that in a purposely unsettling way, so let me explain. Martin Amis's Time's Arrow, Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See, and the film Zone of Interest, which I later learned was adapted from a book by Martin Amis, all explicitly push back on the modern myth that Nazis were this grand, inevitable, overwhelming monster evil that could be cut out of humanity with something as simple as a war. And of course, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and if it were necessary, only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? When it came down to it, the Holocaust happened not simply because of a handful of power-mad, sociopathic bigots, all of whom were justly punished at the end of the war. The Third Reich's power came from the will of the people, who either actively supported it and joined in, or else remained silent and just hoped to muddle through. You may think that this humanization of the average German Nazi sympathizer would lead me to embrace the idea that here, today, in Nazi America, it is, in fact, incumbent upon us all to embrace MAGA voters who now regret their choices so that we can gain a supportive majority and stop this monster before more lives are ruined. Because, of course, the people who voted for Donald Trump last November are not evil. They are our family members and our neighbors. They have their good qualities and their bad qualities. Sure, some openly embrace the proud Nazis in the new administration, like Elon Musk and his Schittler youth in Doge, but other voters just weren't paying attention. Some just liked the anti-immigrant rhetoric or the anti-trans rhetoric, or they really, for some reason, thought that we needed Trump to bring down the cost of eggs. Like, yes, Trump and his fellow Republicans were very, very clear that they were going to cause this destruction, that they are fascists who want nothing more than to get rich and hold on to power at all costs. But outlets like Fox News provided them a lot of cover, pretending Project 2025 was just a big lie. Even CNN and the New York Times and NPR and the Young Turks failed to adequately convey the simple facts to the majority of American voters. And so, in a way, many of them were tricked. Like tricking a baby to think you've disappeared by hiding your face behind your hands. But yeah, tricked all the same. This isn't new. Powerful people have been convincing the poor and oppressed to fight amongst themselves for decades, centuries, millennia. It's practically a feature built into human society. Keep the poor white man voting against his own interests by convincing him that if he doesn't, the poor black man is going to steal whatever he has left. So yeah, a lot of Trump voters were victims of an elaborate scam. But here's the thing. I've been studying scams for several decades now, and one of the most obvious ways to know if someone is going to get scammed is knowing that they already got scammed before. Because even if a person realizes they've been scammed, they may not know why they fell for a scam, and so they haven't fixed the root problem that allowed them to be scammed. Like, are they horribly lonely? Are they lazy but want to get rich quick? Do they hate some particular race, gender, or other characteristic about their fellow humans? Do they think about their fellow humans as actually being subhuman in some way? When that trait remains, it makes it pretty easy to scam you a second time. Personally, I have yet to see a groundswell of Trump voters expressing anguish and regret because random people who may or may not have committed any crime are being shipped to a concentration camp in Guantanamo, or that trans kids are no longer able to access medical care, or that women can no longer access medical care. No, the very few who are upset at extremely specific ways in which they themselves have been directly hurt. They lost their federal job, or their spouse was deported, or the price of eggs is still too high. These are not and never will be reasons to ally with someone because they haven't learned any lesson. They have not developed empathy. They still support Donald Trump hurting people other than themselves. After the conclusion of World War II, historians have noted that there was an initial plan of denazification, but that plan was eventually abandoned in favor of a more gentle democratization, with former Nazis allowed to come back into society and even retake high-ranking jobs. More than half of those employed with West Germany's Federal Ministry of Justice were Nazis. Even high-ranking Nazis who had passed death sentences during the war were forgiven and allowed to move on with their lives as though nothing happened. And the prevailing mood up until the Cold War was that the German people were, in fact, victims. For instance, Hannah Arendt noted that when chatting with a German Gentile after the war and referencing her own Judaism, the response that she normally got is not a personal question such as, where did you go after you left Germany? No sign of sympathy such as, what happened to your family? But a deluge of stories about how Germans have suffered, true enough, of course, but beside the point. And if the object of this little experiment happens to be educated and intelligent, he will proceed to draw up a balance between German suffering and the suffering of others, the implication being that one side cancels the other and we may as well proceed to a more promising topic of conversation. Similarly evasive is the standard reaction to the ruins. When there is any overt reaction at all, it consists of a sigh, followed by the half-rhetorical, half-wistful question, why must mankind always wage wars? The average German looks for the causes of the last war not in the acts of the Nazi regime, but in the events that led to the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise. In his book Aftermath, Life in the Fallout of the Third Reich, 1945 to 1955, journalist Harold Janner details the extent of German victimization. He discusses how prevalent the sentiment was that Germans had been duped by Hitler, as if evil had become a virus and it's not your fault if you catch it. Thus, Nazis who committed atrocities were free to live their lives in peace, at times even returning out of hiding and retaking their real names and old positions. The anti-Semitism, the nationalism, the bigotry, all of that still remained inside of them and therefore wormed its way through the new, more democratic society where many Jews still had good reason to feel unsafe. For instance, he describes the Kielce pogrom of 1946, when 42 Jewish refugees returning from the concentration camps were massacred because of blood libel, and the survivors were actually forced to flee back to Germany, where they experienced virulent anti-Semitism for not fitting in. And thinking about all this, I just wonder, is that what we want? Do we want to defeat Donald Trump, stop his fascist administration, but then allow all of the bigots who supported him to claim victimhood and then move on with no further introspection? Like, yeah, a lot of immigrants were deported, families destroyed, lives ruined, but we suffered too. We were victims of this great scam too. Like, do you want Elon Musk's little Nazis to end up in Congress because they say they were just doing as they were told? They were duped too. And to use an example that I'm sure people have in their heads when they post these Pollyanna screeds on social media, do you really want to join forces with someone who was and still is okay with the deportations, with the trans erasure, with the destruction of women's bodily autonomy? But they now agree that Donald Trump is bad because the price of eggs didn't come down. Because I don't want to be that person's ally. This isn't about ideological purity. I can agree to disagree with someone on whether or not we should build more high-speed rail or how much to tax the 1% or whether property tax should be tied to inflation, but not about the right of people to exist, not about whether someone should be thrown in a camp for people with mental illnesses, not about that real Nazi shit. I'll mention that Janner doesn't actually seem to agree with me on this. In Aftermath, he argues that allowing Nazis and Nazi sympathizers to fade back into society was a necessary prerequisite to Germany being rebuilt as a democracy, a paradox that a New York Times reviewer labeled infuriating yet hard to dismiss. I'll admit, I'm no professional historian. I'm just a girl who accidentally picks up and reads way too much stuff about the Nazis. But I do have to wonder if we can dismiss that, if it was, in fact, a necessary prerequisite to moving on. It's honestly, it's an open question to me. When so many people are aligned on an evil purpose, is humanity's only option to allow them to forgive themselves or reframe themselves as the true victims with no accountability, no fundamental change in their own philosophy or worldview? Can we not expect more of people? Or do we just have to treat bigots as venomous snakes who, once their political power is destroyed, have been defanged? So who cares if there's still a bunch of snakes slithering around your house? They can't hurt you anymore, at least for 80 years or so, after which their fangs grow back and they launch another genocide. Sorry, that metaphor was cruel to snakes. Some species can grow back their teeth, but as far as I know, no species do genocides like the Nazis. Even if that book is right, that the general amnesty for the Nazis was necessary to rebuild German democracy, I'd rather try something new for the new Nazis. Honestly, I don't think that a substantial number of Trump voters are going to switch sides and make a difference in the current fight right now. That fight is being led by progressives and our remaining bureaucrats, lawyers, and judges who still have spines. I don't think we're going to push this movement over the edge this year because some doofus on TikTok just noticed that a check they get every month comes from the government and it isn't showing up anymore. But even so, fuck that doofus, because it's too late. He voted for Trump, and now we're stuck with him for another 4 years or until he dies, at which point things might get worse. And when it comes to the next election, that doofus is going to fall for the same scam again. Some politician who will trick him into voting against his own Social Security check because he hasn't done the work and fixed the problem in his own heart. The bigotry, the fear, the loneliness. Being warmly welcomed into the Never Trump camp isn't going to fix that. He has to do it. As a society, yeah, we can help that. We can prioritize teaching better critical thinking skills to kids at an earlier age. We can prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in society. We can prioritize libraries and higher education. We can make sure that everyone has access to food and housing and healthcare. But we're not going to be doing that in the next 4 years. Those things are all getting worse. So, in the meantime, can we please just shun the Nazis? Or, at the very least, you go teach the Nazis and stop lecturing me because I choose to shun them. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.